that offer to plug you, Adam, stands. Adam, I'm really sorry, mate. I'm really sorry.
That's all right. I'm just going to edit all of you out.
Please.
And
no, really, please. I feel like I talked more than I would normally talk.
Welcome to The Herd Mentality, an eclectic weekly mix of atheistic and humanistic conversations with complete strangers. I've never met them and they've never met me, but we're throwing caution to the wind, taking a risk with a dodgy internet connection, and God willing, get an interesting conversation for you to listen to. I'm your host, Questionable Adam, at Adam Reeks on Twitter, and it's time to meet our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Herd Mentality. With me today I have Jake Farwarton. Jake Farwarton, how are you, sir?
I am tremendous Adam Reeks, and I hear he does.
Truth be told, it's a fact, and that's what this show's all about.
So is fart warning, actually. Actually, the trouble right now is if there is a warning of farts, there's also a warning of some level of follow-through. Edit that out.
Excellent. Now, word on the street is that you've just been to Vietnam for a short stint.
For a short stint, yeah, 10 days of absolute glory and wonder. It was just tremendous. It was the holiday to dream for. We really packed as much as we humanly possibly could into about 10 days, including a 90th birthday and a wedding.
Right.
Not to the 90th, the person who was turning 90.
And
now
wasn't the same one.
And now you're unpacking your bowel.
And then, yeah, well, hey, what can I say? Airline food, and that's all I'm going to say.
All right. Well, I'll have to pop in a sound effect for that one. Thanks, Jake. And we've just before we move on, you know I used to live in Vietnam. I think I mentioned this to you.
I know that you have a French girlfriend, and you may have said that you lived in Vietnam, but I didn't know that.
Where you went, I saw some of the photos you put up on Twitter, the Cu Chi tunnels.
Yeah, wow.
Yes, amazing experience. And they've got the tunnel for the round eye, which is the one where they can accommodate an entire American, and they've sort of had this trench digger in to tunnel it out. So
you are not wrong. And I went in the tower. I went in the tunnel for the round eye, and I've got to say, beyond my this is the stuff that nightmares are made of. You know, all you need is somebody with sharp nails to come towards you, and you will never sleep again in the rest of your... it is the most claustrophobic that I've ever been. I'm not a claustrophobic human being. I have very few phobias, but I've got to say, that was one that triggered all of them together, and wow, holy moly, it was tremendous. But
and
on the other hand,
you saw the tunnels for the Vietnamese people?
Yeah, I did, and my wife actually fit in the tourist portion of the entryway. So they've got this little entryway that is less long and less wide than my foot, and basically this was the entry point, hidden amongst the jungle that the Cu Chi people would jump in and out of. And wow, yeah, my wife got stuck. My wife is a very gorgeous, slim lady, and she got stuck. There you go. But she's also American, so Americans have fat booties. But yeah, also on that day I got to shoot an AK-47, which was pretty amazing.
Yes. What were your thoughts on that?
It was shooting a gun, so I'm not a big fan of guns.
Stuff goes bang.
Stuff goes bang, and then stuff on the other side goes splat. I'm not a big fan of guns, but it's still an awesome thing. Look, humans invented this for warfare, but in the same respect, it's also for fun and sport, I suppose, in the Olympics, and that's what I was going for, so I got all bullseyes.
Outstanding. And I've heard Kevin, who's at Perth_atheist, giggling along in the background there. Hello, Kevin.
How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thank you for caring. What's going on in your world?
Oh, not much. Another sunny day here in Perth.
But your accent doesn't align with the geography.
No, actually, all people in Perth sound like this.
It's true, Adam. I don't know whether you've been to Perth or not, but yeah, it's
we
true.
all sound like this. Yeah, I'm originally Canadian.
Right.
Been in Australia about 6 years now.
And from what I know, you're a teacher.
Yes, I teach English to foreign students.
As a Canadian?
As a Canadian, so I teach them...
in Australia?
Yeah.
So you're a Canadian... You're a Canadian in Australia teaching people from overseas how to speak English or Australian?
Exactly. English.
Okay. So you don't bother to go the next step, go the whole hog, as some may say?
No. As a North American, my grasp on accents is terrible, so I wouldn't try to teach them how to sound Australian.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah, it just sounds.
Even we sound terrible.
Well, my impression of you would be even worse.
Oh, well, no, we can't leave it hanging like that.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
hear an Australian accent, Kevin. Come on.
Well, I can say g'day reasonably well, and I'm quite fond of crikey.
Yeah, I'd argue that.
And that's about it. That's pretty much it.
Hey, just a funny observation. Actually, two funny observations. The first funny observation is, might I say also, firstly, Kevin, you're an incredibly handsome gentleman. Like, Adam is a very handsome gentleman, but I must say, you're a very handsome gentleman.
Thank you.
And the second part of what I was going to say was, have you ever noticed that sorry, this was a Jerry Seinfeld beginning joke. Have you ever noticed that when you go overseas as an Australian, when you speak to people from another country and you're speaking in the same language, say, for example, English, I tend to occasionally overemphasize my Australianness in order to authenticate the fact that I'm Australian and perhaps not from other Western countries that have bad reputations. Do you find that, Adam?
I do. My French is... I speak French, evidently. I think I've elaborated upon that in many previous episodes. But when I lived in France, and indeed when I go back, if I speak to somebody in Paris in French, they immediately assume that I'm either American or British, at which point I just say, no, I'm Australian. And then it's just free beers for Adam. Happy days.
Yeah, no, that's true. But most people hate Parisians anyway.
Well, with good reason.
Yeah. But I think actually, Kevin, you probably have it worse, because, you live just above that country that I was mentioning but didn't mention.
To be honest, I mean, for the vast majority of us do sound the same, so, I mean, I honestly don't care if people ask if I'm American just based on my accent. But if they've been talking to me for a while and then assume I'm American, that's a bit more of an insult.
That's true. You could help them, though, by ending every sentence with the proposition A.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I do that unintentionally anyway. And then I say about. And in my mind, I say it the same way everyone else in the world does, but people still giggle when I say it, so.
Yeah, it's because you said a boot.
The Canadian accent is to American what the New Zealand is to the Australian.
Yep.
Yeah, we get mocked much the same way that New Zealand gets mocked by Australia.
Excellent. All right, well, gentlemen, we're on here today to talk about having awkward situations with family.
Ah, yes. Incest is the... What is that thing that they say about incest?
The game the whole family can play?
There we go, you win.
That's the one.
That's the one. So you two gentlemen, and for anyone who is on Twitter and not following these guys, then, well, you're dead to us, but these guys are atheists, funnily enough, appearing on an atheist podcast. In fact, Jake, you have your own atheist podcast, the Imaginary Friends Show.
Yeah, but it's far less superior to this one.
How dare you? How dare you?
Oh, no, it's sacrilege, yes. That's true. That is sacrilegious talking right there. But, yeah, the Imaginary Friend Show.
Isn't everything we say sacrilegious?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay, so the short story is that you guys yourselves are atheists, but your family, social circle, etc., are not.
Correct.
My social circle is predominantly atheist. I have a hard time interacting with people what I think about their religious beliefs. I can't separate that from the relationship. So, family, very religious, friends, not so much.
Perhaps the focus here should be family, because you can pick and choose your friends, but you can't pick and choose your family. So, Jake, you're an atheist, but your family is not. How did you come out to these guys?
Well, I just said I'm an atheist.
All right, well, okay, we can end the call.
one of the easiest things that you'll ever... No, but seriously, it's one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. The harder one was when we were all going to church and I realised that I really didn't believe in Christianity. And coming out to my mother, especially, my dad is actually a scientist, and he never went to church. In fact, the only times that he went to church was Christmas, and that was mainly because my mum begged him to take care of the kids while she went and did the whole singing and whatever it is that people do when they go to church on Christmas Day. Yeah, my dad was always atheist, but mother was very Christian. We had always gone to very Christian churches, very Christian schools. We'd been brought up as Christians, and that's just basically the way it was. But yeah, coming out and saying that I no longer believed in Christianity, that was probably the hardest, because not only is it a rejection of the belief system, it's also a rejection upon reflection, in my opinion. It's probably also a rejection of the values that your family has taught you, because the values themselves are often tied to the belief system itself.
And
it's also
flawed.
a rejection of the education that your parents have given you, because they're the ones that instilled it upon you. So it's a difficult thing to get rid of, but ultimately it's the easiest thing to get rid of, because the second that it comes out and you get the reaction, well, it's all over and done with, and it's you where to from there? Well, everywhere, anywhere you want to go. And depending on your relationship with your family, it can go really well, or obviously it can go really poorly. But in my circumstance, at least with my immediate family, my extended family is a little bit different. We can go into that if you like. My immediate family was very okay with that. Absolutely.
Rightio. What about you, Kevin? What happened?
To tell you the truth, I don't even remember. I don't think I've ever explicitly said to them I'm an atheist, but it's become obvious over the years. They used to drag me to church when I was, I guess, until the age of 16, at which point I said, you know what, unless you physically try and drag me, this is not happening anymore. And I think at first it was more just a teenage rebellion thing. You believe this, so I don't, and it's a bit silly anyway. And then as the years went on, I just kind of got farther and farther away until I realized myself I was an atheist, but I didn't actually have that conversation with them. I think they became aware based on things I said to them. Yeah, I wish I could remember the transition to atheism, but it happened so long ago and over such a long time. There's nothing that really punctuated it.
I think a lot of us go through the same thing, though, especially when we're brought up super religious, that we sort of go through an extended deprogramming where we might try other religions and other belief systems and other philosophies, just basically working our way towards realizing that it's really the thinking that's wrong, not the belief systems themselves.
Did you try any other systems, Jake?
Of course, yeah. I tried all of them. I even tried Scientology, which was awesome.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was audited. That was about as far as it went, because, Scientology is about as funny as a religion can get.
Yes.
Honestly. And just going in there, the whole thing is comical. And you realise when you're going through the auditing process, the guy's job, or the individual's job, is to pick areas of insecurity. Some of them we wear on our sleeves as humans. Others are more deep-seated and need to be picked at. But the whole premise behind the auditing procedure is that you lay your cards on the table so that you can find out exactly what's wrong with you. So they have their job set for you, and it's just so easy. It's a piece of cake to see, especially if you've been through religious programming in the past, to really see exactly what they're doing and sort of look through it. But yeah, I tried everything. I tried Buddhism. I tried Pentecostalism. I was brought up Catholic, so I tried. And it was the sort of more fundamentalist side of Catholicism as well, I should say. Yeah, I tried Pentecostalism. I tried ecumenicalism. What would you call that?
Fictional.
Fictional. They're all fictional.
Yeah.
But what is it? Episcopalian. What's the other name? Anyway,
that's just where you eat fish for a month, isn't it?
Anglican.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
That Episcopalian, I like it. That's when you eat fish. That's very nice. Yeah, I tried many of them. I even read the Celestine Prophecy. You ever read that crappy piece of shit book? Wow. No. Can you see auras around plants? No, it's because plants don't have auras. Okay.
No, Jake. To be fair, the Blue Mountains, they have auras.
Yeah.
The Blue Mountains are blue because of the aura of the trees.
Yeah.
Which can be actually tracked down to something that's scientific.
The North and South Pole of the world also have auras, but it's actually high energy particles streaming off the electromagnetic field that the core of the Earth generates.
Look, I'll thank you to keep the science out of this. If you don't mind. This is not a podcast where we can get to the crux of the matter.
My most sincere of apologies, sir.
Rightio. So, I also had the experience with the Scientologists. However, I went into it knowing exactly what to expect. Yeah, they asked me about all my ex-girlfriends.
And you just said they were all smoking hot, incredibly intelligent.
They're all now Scientologists. But I knew exactly what I was going to.
To avoid Scientology, actually. So my ex-girlfriend is there.
Yeah, they're able to... And it is just cold reading. That's all it is.
Well, it's structured cold reading. When you see people like Darren Brown...
he's amazing.
He is. He really is amazing.
Is he the guy with the amazing beard?
He does have a pretty amazing satanic-looking beard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you talking about James Randi, the mega beard?
No. Darren Brown, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got a really small kind of goatee style.
Small, yeah, exactly.
Doesn't he do the TV segment?
He does.
where it's like he's trying to sell a vacuum cleaner but asking you to give him $57 a month so you can have a miracle?
Well, no, Darren Brown is actually a skeptic.
Sorry.
No,
I've
so
completely
he's a good guy. He's on our side.
Okay.
Written a couple of really good books, too.
I think.
Yeah. So Darren Brown is like a cold reader extraordinaire in that he's spent half of his life learning how to do it as a skeptic as well. So teaching it from our side basically to show the feeble nature of the human mind.
Yes, I know who you're referring to now. Yes, several people have commented that this is the sort of thing that I should go and spend some time looking up, and as yet I have not. So I do apologise.
He's a great guy, and he has some incredible documentaries out there as well. But the idea is, with this guy, it's completely unstructured, and he can pick up anything basically because of his training. But with Scientology, they don't. The auditors are often practitioners themselves that are trying to themselves work through issues. So it's like a multi-level marketing scheme basically, and the structure of the auditing is very textbook, if you know what I mean. It is literally them reading out of a textbook where they have been taught to audit. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
From the test that I went and did, I later found out that apparently when they had the little stand set up, there's always a Scientologist nearby overseeing things.
Of course.
Which explains why they got so nervous when I started asking them about their little machine that she kept fiddling with the dials. Because whenever she'd ask me a question, basically it's an ohm meter.
E-meter.
Yes, let's call it an e-meter. It measures electrical resistance.
Oh, sorry, you were referring to what it actually is.
Yeah.
What it actually is, yeah.
My apologies.
So you hold these two
conductors,
and it runs through a machine, and they ask you questions. But whenever they ask you a question, she'd lean over and modify the setting in order for it to give a result that apparently was some sort of amazing revelation. Oh, wow, he had an ex-girlfriend. There's got to be something here that we can get him into Scientology with. And you can adjust the results just by squeezing harder and creating more surface area on the little probes. So I kept doing that, and just let it go up and down and up and down.
Well, Adam, Xenu does work in mysterious ways.
Muscular ways.
Muscular.
That's the one. Simple as that. Anyway, we're a little off track. Tell me, Jake, when did it all turn to dysentery for you? When you
to dysentery?
Yes.
Well, on my trip back from Vietnam.
Well, no. I'm talking proverbially here. When you dropped the bombshell on the family, and what happened? Was there some fallout? Yeah. I mean, one side of the family no longer speaks to us, and by us, I mean one side of the family no longer speaks to my immediate family because of
because of that.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. They're Opus Dei Christians. You're familiar with Opus Dei? They wrote a whole book about it. It's the Da Vinci
I've read
Code.
The Da Vinci Code, yes. Across that.
So they are the... so I mentioned earlier that I was of the fundamentalist part of Catholicism. So they're even further up the fundamentalist echelons in that they wear things like a chalice to enact, what do they call it, like ritual punishment?
Oh, the self-flagellation.
Self-flagellation, yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
That sounds rude.
They're really weird human beings. They have daughters. They have children. It's really, and a son as well. It's really unfortunate, and it's such a terrible situation. But they will not associate whatsoever with any of the family as a consequence of that. And secondary to that, I wrote a book. One of the letters that I wrote in my book. But the book was basically a bunch of letters written to...
Give it a plug.
Give it a plug. It's called Letters to Christian Leaders, Hollow Be Thy Claims, which Catholics will know is a modified sentence from the Our Father prayer. Mm-hmm. So basically, in each of these letters, I addressed a letter or a claim made by a fundamentalist individual. Most of them were from the US, some of them from around the world, but one of the people that I addressed an address from was the head of the Opus Dei Church. So that may have further nailed the coffin, so to speak, poorly.
You speak very lightly of it now, but presumably it wasn't always this easy.
Look, it's unfortunate. The worst thing is, that you see these people who, I spent a lot of time with their kids growing up because they're around the same age. They're cousins. They're my mother's first cousins, aunties and uncles that have had children, etc. So these are first and second cousins that I was very close with growing up that no longer want to be associated with us in any way, shape, or form because one of their sons doesn't believe in the same God that they do. I mean, it's terribly fickle and it is somewhat offensive. But on the bright side, the woman, the mother, the wife, was a bit of a cow anyway.
So you've had a win?
Well, no, I mean I make light of it, but
I know, as do I. But
it is really unfortunate. It really sucks. They were great people, great human beings, and despite their faith, we could have always been friends. We could have always been friendly family members. But their decision to not allow their children, not allow the family to associate with alternative opinions, it just means that the kids will stay further cemented in their belief systems, which is just terrible.
Yes, well, you'll have to send them a herd mentality Christmas card.
We actually send them a Christmas card every year, and we have not heard from them. As I said, we really have had no communication with them in many years.
It's like family functions, weddings, funerals, you don't cross paths.
Well, we've actually had a wedding in the meantime, and they basically asked my mother, will Jake be there? And my mother said yes, and so they didn't come, any of them. So yeah, look, it's not a great situation at all, but yeah, that's the way that the cookie crumbles, so to speak.
Kevin, what about some fallout on your side?
No, there hasn't really been any fallout. I mean, well, actually, that's not true. Because of the way I was brought up in this really hardcore Pentecostal family, as soon as I went to university, I left home at 17. And since then, I guess I'd say my family and my immediate family have really just drifted apart. And I would say a lot of it has to do with the way that I was brought up. But there wasn't, one, like I said earlier, nothing punctuated, one single event. There was never a big fight or a big argument. But I just have a hard time reconciling their beliefs with my worldview and knowing that, my father, who speaks 5 languages, went to Oxford, believes that a magic man in the sky controls everything. I can't reconcile that in my own head. It's an odd thing.
It is an odd thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that a man can speak 5 languages.
Yeah.
If there was a God, why do we need multiple languages?
Well, don't you remember the Tower of Babel?
Yeah.
For goodness sake, this guy's an amateur.
Tut.
Right. Right in Genesis. We always make light of theists being, not as bright and not intelligent, but my father's probably the smartest man I've met, so it's always been a struggle for me to just deal with the fact that, yes, this man is extremely intelligent, but still believes in his extent, his knowledge of science is based on a book written 1,500 years ago.
Well, Jake, you might have something to add to this, but there's recently been a study outing atheists as being smarter than theists. While it's a very comprehensive meta-study of quite a large sample size, I think that perhaps there's some more going on here. It's the way by which people take the tests and can analyse the data.
It has to do less with what you've said and more to do with random sampling. If you take a random group of theists, they will often come from a wide range of backgrounds, education levels, socioeconomic statuses, etc. If you take that same amount, that same number of individuals from atheists, those people are quite often going to have a slightly higher or slightly more above average level of socioeconomics or socioeconomic status. They're likely to have a higher levels of education because often education correlates with atheism, mainly because it correlates with deprogramming.
It correlates with reading books.
Well, yeah.
Emphasis on the S.
But like Philosophy 101, which is taught to just about everybody in every university around the world, is about the most efficient way to deprogram oneself of any belief system, because it teaches epistemology, and epistemology is one of the most important things you can ever teach any individual ever. And it's something that I'm finding quite difficult right now to teach to my 8-year-old. But it's incredibly important. Epistemology just means how do you know what you know, or how do we know what we know. So teaching children, teaching individuals, teaching adults, etc., to figure out exactly how they know what they know, or how the information has been delivered, where the information comes from, what the origins are, what proof do you have, what's the evidence, etc., etc. It's an incredibly important lesson. But that's basically it. So you've got the sample size from theists. They come from a broad range of backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses and education levels. You take that same number of atheists, they are on average going to have high levels of education, etc., etc. So it's basically slated. It's basically slated towards atheists. They were always going to win that because of the fact that, again, atheism correlates with education, and education correlates with higher levels of socioeconomic status.
I don't like the way the media puts spin on it either. I retweeted the link the other day. Somebody else had written just something along the lines of, theists, suck it, here it is. When in fact it doesn't quite tell the full story. It
really doesn't. In fact, it tells one side of the story that is heavily biased. Because, I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. The issue is bias. It's the fact that atheists, again, have greater levels of education, and that is most likely because they had access to greater levels of education. I mean, that talks again to the socioeconomic status. So it just means that they come from better areas. This is one of our greatest defences against theism, in my opinion. And perhaps, Kevin, this is something to talk about with your dad if you ever get to have the opportunity to have this kind of a conversation. If your dad speaks 5 languages, those 5 languages are probably from 5 different corners of the globe. And I speak metaphorically when I say corners of the globe.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness you clarified. Though the reason that they speak 5 different languages is because they're genetically, geographically differentiated from the rest of the planet. They developed their own ways to communicate. Not only did they develop their own ways to communicate, they also developed their own belief systems and religions. And people who were born in one specific region quite often have their own language, they have their own belief system, and they will often grow up believing in that belief system, will go on to pass it on to their children, who will pass it on to their children, etc., 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 ad infinitum. And then they go and move to another area and they realise that different people believe something differently. Well, that's really crazy. So the conversation that you can have with your dad is just this fact, if you were born in any other country in the world, you would probably believe in a different God. So what makes that other person in that other, again speaking metaphorically, corner of the globe, any more right or any less right than you are, just based on the fact that they were born into a particular region that believed in a particular God? You were born into a particular region that believed in a particular God. What makes them right? What makes them wrong? Why are they wrong?
I have asked so many theists that question, and not a single one has ever given me an answer. Not even a reasonable, just no answer at all.
Yeah.
The best that Christians come up with is, personal relationship with God. Well, you know what? Because Muslims told me the same thing. Like, it's ridiculous. It's such a valid question, and they just don't seem to get it. Religion comes from culture, geography, family. Change one of those factors, and you get a different God. But they just don't seem to get that.
It's so entirely correct. I mean, in the 10 days that I spent over in Vietnam, which was absolutely not enough. Kevin, I'm an anthropology student, or at least I was. I'm now, I suppose, an anthropologist, even though I haven't worked in the field, so I don't think I can call myself that. But I completed a degree, and religion was my interest. That was the reason why I got into it, or that I started to study it. And one of the most interesting things, in my opinion, is you've got areas like the Middle East, for example, that have a whole different bunch of religions fighting against each other, and they are literally fighting against each other. And then you've got another country like Vietnam. There's 70-odd% Buddhist or atheist, and I don't differentiate between the two because they're the Asian Buddhists who don't believe that Buddha was divine, so just that Buddha basically came towards a self-realization. Sorry for expanding on that. And then, the other 30% is made up from Muslims, Christians, not so many Jews, but basically a whole bunch of the other, I said Hindu, didn't I? And the Brahmists as well, who, Brahma is part of the Hindu belief system, but it's very specifically towards Brahma. Anyway, so you've got areas like the Middle East that have all of these religions in this powder keg, and quite often, like other powder kegs, they explode. But then you've got other countries like Vietnam who have all of these religions functioning together. And I don't understand why that happens. I honestly don't. But it was one of the most amazing experiences and I'm really not entirely sure where I was going with this, but you'll have to indulge me because I am jet lagged. But it was really amazing to see so many different religions in this area, in this very close-knit area. 90 million people, half, or a third of the size of Australia, yet there's so little religious violence. I don't understand that.
Don't have the answers. but that's not why people listen to this show. They don't come
here
looking for answers. They come here looking for nonsense.
Or questions.
Or questions. I'll be the one asking questions.
In my opinion, the most important lesson that you can ever learn is learning to ask questions. And again, that's something that I'm really trying to instill in my youngest daughter, my 8-year-old, right now. Epistemology. How do you know what you know? Ask questions. Learn to ask questions, because questions will not only save your life, but they will enrich your life.
And make you a podcast host.
Perhaps.
One day.
Perhaps.
One day. Rightio, Kevin, anything to add? Any thoughts?
I'm really sorry. I dug a very deep hole there, didn't I?
No,
Yes.
it was quite interesting. I didn't realize that about Vietnam. And it is interesting that you've got some places where, religion divides and causes war, and I guess it doesn't always have to be the case.
Yeah, I really don't understand how it happened. But yeah, sorry, I don't want to take away from your story, Kevin, because that was... It'd be really interesting. So what sort of conversation... Oh, shit. Sorry, Adam.
Look, just shut up for a bit, Jack.
I just sat in the host position. I'm really sorry. I'm shutting up.
Look, let's drag it back. Let's take a deep breath, align our chakras. If you had a hot tip for somebody who was considering leaving their religion or outing themselves to their family, because I know a lot of people who DM me and ask to remain anonymous would like to know more about this. So... tell me your thoughts. What's a hot tip?
That's a good question. Like I said, I don't remember actually stating it explicitly to my parents. Like, it's just, like Jake said, just come out and say it. Be open and honest with them and tell them, I guess I would explain why you think the things that you do. Explain what led you to this realization. And I guess if you have a solid relationship, they'll be able to deal with it. But then I guess in other cases, like with the crazy side of the family, it's going to serve to divide. I guess you just have to decide if it's worth the risk. I
didn't even talk about my conspiracy theory side of the family, which is actually quite funny.
Hang on, you're related to Alex Jones?
I have a uncle who listens exclusively to Alan Jones. And it was,
not Alan, not Alan Jones. I'm talking about the right wing.
I meant Alex Jones.
Oh, sorry, gosh.
He probably also listens to Alan Jones. He's that kind of guy.
Not exclusive then, is it? As you were.
But it's so funny. Like, I had this conversation once, and how do you sit and speak to somebody who is an intense conspiracy theorist? And I had to think about this. How do you sustain a conversation with somebody who, for example, believes that 9/11 is an inside job? The cognitive dissonance that it takes is ridiculously large. So I thought, what I'm going to try and do is out-conspiracy the conspiracy theorist.
Oh, wow.
So he's talking about 9/11 being an inside job, and I'm nodding along enthusiastically, and I said, dude, 9/11 was an inside job, yes, I completely agree with you, but what actually happened was those towers were empty all along. They were always empty. They housed within them. This is confirmed. All you have to do is look on the internet, okay? This is confirmed.
Here's a YouTube link.
But yeah, absolutely. And you will see in that YouTube link, those twin towers were actually housing enormous missiles that were launched directly at the moon because China had enormous lasers that were pointed directly at America.
Mm-hmm.
And the Americans would not take that. George Bush would not take that. He is a patriot, okay?
Damn straight, isn't he? What?
So he shot those rockets up there that were concealed within the Twin Towers, blew up the moon. You look outside, right now you will see a moon that is completely different to the moon that you saw yesterday, right? The scientists, they call it the phases of the moon. It's actually projection. Yeah, that's why they have satellites up there, Adam.
Yeah,
they have satellites up there to project the moon in the clouds. Like
some sort of celestial bat signal.
the better bat signal. So anyway, I had a bit of fun with the guy. He listened enthusiastically and then realised that I was taking the piss and then continued drinking his scotch. Take the conspiracy one step further. Because, religion is nothing if not a conspiracy.
But the trick, and the trick here is to show them how simple it is for them to accept without evidence
A story.
A story. Doesn't matter what the story is. I like the one about the moon and the bat signal. That's brilliant. And then just say, okay, I made all of this up.
I mean, that's why the astronauts went up there, not so long ago to correct the lens in the Hubble. Correct a lens in the Hubble as if they couldn't build a lens correctly on Earth.
Oh,
no,
Jesus.
They weren't correcting a lens. They were building a projector inside the Hubble.
The new hollow Hubble.
Seems legit.
Seems legit.
It is entirely correct, Adam. Sometimes you will find that's the place that you need to go to add a little bit of absurdity in order to help people to understand the absurdity. But the other side is just asking questions. How do you know that? How do you know that? And ultimately, that line of questioning will always come down to one final point: faith. And faith is just pretending to know things that you don't know, or more specifically, pretending to know things that you can't know.
That's a really interesting one, and I've just had a thought, perhaps a future podcast when I begin discussing this sort of stuff with Christians, because I always make notes when I'm speaking to people, because I think, that's a really interesting point, I might come back to that. And then write down on the piece of paper, okay, here's what they think they know, and then just draw an arrow towards faith. You'd be able to plot it, I would think, like along the x-axis.
Yeah, absolutely. Or just use Venn diagrams, because they look like boobs.
Exactly. And who doesn't like that?
Well,
Kevin, he doesn't.
Big fan.
Oh, okay, thank goodness. It's on the record now.
But
I'll edit that out.
You can pose that question to Christians, and a lot of them will say, well, God talks to me, or from my personal relationship with Jesus. So they get around it that way. They honestly think thoughts that they have come from somewhere else, like God whispering to them. Or
well, a couple of episodes ago, I had some Christians on my show. One of them said, okay, yes, I've heard Jesus, he speaks to me, etc. And I made it really quite blunt and just said, okay, how does Jesus speak to you? And then there was nothing specific that came from it. It was just a series of coincidences that came about. And
this is not at all uncommon. Most or many religions will describe a thing like burning in your bosom. They actually say burning in your bosom. And that's what Jesus is. Jesus is basically...
Chest thrush.
Chest thrush, exactly.
You get a cream for that.
Yeah, you can. Doesn't always work. Topical creams are good, but you need some good solid topical steroids.
Excellent.
I found. But yeah, no, they'll describe something like a burning in your bosom, like you'll feel, Adam, when you've got an adrenaline rush in your chest, you've just made a bunch of sales, or you've just before you're about to step up to the blocks at a sprint, just before you start a triathlon or a half marathon. I'm just going from what I normally do on a weekend, but yeah, so
that's all one weekend.
Just yesterday, actually. But, basically, the religions will quite often put it into words, and they'll use words that are synonymous or ubiquitous amongst that religion. So, burning in the bosom is a very ubiquitous one. So, and it's actually one that Mormons use quite regularly. So, if you're ever speaking to Mormons, burning in your bosom, they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Brilliant.
Not an STD. What you can quite often say is, because what they're actually talking about right there is faith. That's their physiological symptom of faith. When God speaks to them, it's them getting a thought and them getting the burning in the bosom, which confirms their thought quite often. And I can also speak from experience on there, because it's something that I remember seeing while sitting in the church pews, having a good long hard think, getting the burning in my bosom, knowing that it was the right answer, and then speaking to the priest afterwards and having it attributed by them to God. That was Jesus speaking to you, directly. They were confirming that exactly the course of action that came into your head that you thought of is exactly the right course of action. Okay, so that's quite often the confirmatory God talks to you type reaction. But all you have to do is relate that to an experience that they probably themselves have also felt that wasn't at all related to God. And I'm talking about things like stepping up to the blocks at a sprint. Or, making a bunch of sales in a row, being on fire. You're walking up to a pretty girl or a good-looking guy in a bar, about to chat them up or buy them a drink. Or
in a previous episode, I discussed this. I'm trying to start the herd mentology, which is an offshoot of Scientology. How could I possibly get more people to feel this burning in their bosom when they listen to, say, whatever nonsense I'm going on about?
Well, meth is probably the easiest solution.
Right, I'm doing that right now. What's next?
Well, secondary to that, you can take up sports, or play video games.
Yay.
That's all you need to do. Shoot a goal in soccer or shoot up some heroin. Whatever. I mean, whatever floats your boat. It's the one question of life. What makes you happy?
Well, Kevin makes me happy, and would make me even happier if he got a word in.
Yeah. Oh, shit. I'm so sorry, Adam.
I'm really enjoying listening to what Jake has to say, though.
Well, he's got a whole bloody podcast for that, does he not?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Not at all, Jake. We love you.
Yeah, it's a terrible habit, though. And I haven't been on a podcast for like 3 weeks now, so I've got all of this talking stored up.
You've got it burning in your microphone?
Burning in my bosom as well, yeah.
Bosom, yeah.
And plus, I've been in Vietnam. The person who had the 90th birthday was my wife's grandmother, who was a deacon in the Anglican Church. The wedding was for my cousin. My cousin's sister is a priest in an Anglican church. So I'm sure that you guys can appreciate that I've been around a whole lot of religion and I had to keep my mouth shut 90% of the time for the last 2 weeks. Pretty easily. I just thought of all of the wonderful bargains that I was about to get in Saigon Square.
Oh, the tag hoo-ha? What about the Lolex? Or the Sonnen? Discman?
This Sony is one of the best brands in Vietnam. Yeah, so I bought a lot of shirts. I bought some Dr. Dre Beats, the Bluetooth, wireless, and noise cancelling.
Knock off, yes.
Knock off, yeah. North Face backpack, North Face jacket. Yeah, I made off really well.
Excellent. And Kevin, what have you bought from Vietnam lately?
Just a bride.
Brilliant.
Just a bride, very nice.
All right. Well, look, Kevin, any final thoughts?
I guess what I was hoping to get from anyone listening is the stage that I'm at with my parents. I got my father to actually read Letter to a Christian Nation, which, if anyone hasn't read it, I highly recommend it for if you can convince someone in your family. It's not aggressive. It's very well written. It's concise, and I don't think Harris quite has the same reputation as Dawkins and Hitchens.
Mm-hmm. Not in his early writings, anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's not quite the devil as they are.
He hasn't hit second
I got
gear.
my father to read Letter to a Christian Nation, and then he responded to it. And his 2 points basically were that evolution hasn't been proven, and that the Big Bang Theory violates I think he called it the first law of the universe.
Oh, the first law of thermodynamics?
Yeah, that's what he meant. Actually, he calls it the first law of physics. I've composed this, 6-page response trying to basically teach him everything that I know about the origins of the universe and what's happened since then. But it's been sitting in my draft folder for about 2 months. And I just go back and I kind of revise it, and I'm just wondering if it's even worth sending. I still can't decide if it's worth sending or not.
In order for it to be a decision worth making, you have to weigh what the cost-benefit is going to be. I mean, the cost to you is relatively low in terms of your time, but is there going to be a better outcome?
I mean, that's ideally, if, that would be the best case scenario. My father realizes, hey, these are some good points, maybe I've been mistaken, and it causes him to kind of, examine his life and, my parents' lives. But, or he just dismisses it, or I have, no idea what the outcome would be. But
even better than that, you get to have an intellectual conversation with your dad. I mean, that's something that so few people get to have. Quite often, a conversation, especially as a man, quite often the conversations that we have with our dads are superficial.
Oh, yeah. Well, no. I'd say sometimes I call Dad up and ask him if I can borrow $20.
Yeah, of course. Which is totally deep, because your dad has deep pockets, I've heard. But being able to have an intellectual conversation with your obviously very learned father, I mean, I would find that personally immensely gratifying.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And I think I've tried to write it as non-aggressively as possible. I know sometimes on Twitter I have definitely gone off on people, so I really have to be careful. And at least I'm not limited by 140 characters now. So like I said, I've been
6 pages.
Revising.
Reverting to email.
It's got to be a solid 6 pages. Maybe I've said too much, I don't know.
Righty, you guys, we might wrap it up there. Thank you very much.
Like a Christmas present?
Like a Christmas present. Now, is there anything you'd like to plug, Jake?
Apart from you, Adam.
Of course you would.
Yeah, you can check out my podcast if you feel so inclined. The ImaginaryFriendsShow.com podcast, which is all the W's plus a dot, and then ImaginaryFriendsShow.com, and then my book, if you like, Letters to Christian Leaders, Hollow Be Thy Claims. And just on the note of the podcast, our amazing yearly Christmas carol that we put out is about to be released. It's called Merry Mythmas. Look out for it. It is fantastic, if I do say so myself, and I do, considering I wrote, produced, sang, rapped, and everything else for it.
Outstanding. Well, podcast and book, never heard of them. All right, thank you. Kevin, what do you got? What would you like to promote, apart from giving blood? Because that's what you gave up today in order to come on this third-rate show.
You know, it's funny you mention that, because that's all it is I wanted to mention, especially at this time of year. In Australia, you can donate full blood every 3 months or plasma and platelets every 2 weeks. People are friendly, the snacks are good, it's only an hour out of your day, and it's an easy thing to do that helps a lot of people. So donateblood.com.au.
Yeah, unless you're O negative, in which case don't worry, because everybody else, the rest of the O negs have you covered.
They got it, don't worry, you'll be fine.
What are your blood types, out of curiosity?
I'm O neg.
A positive.
See, now you're super important, so you absolutely need to be giving blood more than you currently do.
More than you're allowed to?
Well, see, Kevin,
I would say so.
Before the show, Kevin said, "Oh, look, I won't be able to make it. I'm giving blood from like 3:30 to 6:30." I thought there's going to be none of him left.
I just fall asleep in the chair and they can't wake me up. That's all it is. Still here.
Guys, thank you very much. You've been a wonderful crowd. I look forward to dealing with you on that Twitter thing.
Awesome. You too, Adam. Cheers, Dave.
And I love you both dearly.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a quick thank you to everybody who, over the Christmas period, without me begging, borrowing, stealing, torturing, or threatening, I had a bunch of people sign up and offer some financial support through the means of tithing via the Herd Mentality website. And I found it very heartwarming. It was a wonderful Christmas gift, because this year, in 2014, I really feel like we're going to be able to do something big with it and turn it into a full-time project. I thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much.